Where is your favourite place? One of mine is Cornwall. I first went there as a small child on holiday, and more recently, it's where we've had our family holidays for the past few years. I still get very excited when I first spot the sea in the distance, and I feel myself physically relax as we approach. There are beaches and moors to visit, sandcastles to build, seals to spot in the distance. And then you've got chips, Cornish pasties, ice cream, afternoon tea, crab, and even Cornish wine now. There really is something for everyone. Cornwall is definitely my happy place, and I'm always so grateful when I'm there. It's just somewhere I love to be. I learned something new about Cornwall this week though. The first Harvest Festival service, as we now know them, was in the Cornish parish of Morwenstow in the autumn of 1843, 178 years ago. The parish priest, Robert Hawker, was rather eccentric and didn't stick with the conventional way of doing things. He invited his parishioners to a new service as he wanted everyone to thank God for providing them with so much. The bread that was used during communion in that first Harvest Festival service was made from the first corn that was harvested from the parish of Morwenstow that year. They kept that corn to one side, and once all the rest of the harvest had been safely gathered in, bread was made from that pile of corn, and the community joined together in the church to thank God and to give back to God through the bread at communion. The idea being that the first bit of harvest was the best, and they were giving back to God the best of what he had given them. Nearly 200 years on, Harvest Festival services, a bit like that first one, are taking place across the country and in other places across the world at their harvest times as well. Harvest Festival is about saying thank you, as that first one was. And saying thank you is really important, isn't it? One of the first things that many children are taught to say is often ta, a way of saying thank you. Saying thank you shows that you're grateful for what you've been given or what's been done for you. And having someone say thank you to you shows you that you are appreciated. Thanking God is literally at the heart of our worship as Christians as well. The Holy Communion service is also known as the Eucharist, which literally means thanksgiving. Thanking God for all that has been done for us through the sacrifice made by Jesus on the cross. And we thank God in our prayers and in our hymns, because there is so much to thank God for. As an aside, sometimes it's a good thing to make a list and see how many things we can thank God for. Why not try it today? So Harvest Festival, though, really focuses on thanking God for providing for what we need. All our readings today remind us that God provides for us and that we should be thankful for what we have. Our reading from Paul's letter to Timothy talks about being content with what we have, rather than trying to gain more money or more stuff, to be happy with what we've got. The problem is, we do tend to want more. J.D. Rockefeller, widely considered to be the richest person in modern history, was once asked how much money was enough to make somebody happy. His answer, just another dollar. The problem is, when we're not happy with what we have and want more and more, it can distract us from seeing just how blessed we are and appreciating what we have. It is so easy to take things for granted, isn't it? I walked into the kitchen earlier and made myself some lunch and poured a glass of Coke without really thinking about it. I just did it. A few years ago, I went to Malawi to help train churches in offering support to children and families when a parent had died. I met one family of 5 where the 17-year-old was caring for the younger 4. They just about managed to get by. They had bought 6 bottles of fizzy drink for my visit, which cost a considerable portion of the money they had for food that week. I felt really bad that they were going without something else so they could give me a bottle of Coke. But they were so happy to do so. They were grateful that they had enough money that week to be able to offer me that hospitality. And they were really grateful that they had had an excuse to treat themselves a little bit as well. Because for them, a fizzy drink was a real treat. They certainly didn't take it for granted. So yes, I'm definitely on board with what Paul was saying to Timothy. Because to be honest, that family in Malawi were in many ways far happier, far more content, and far more grateful than many of the people I know in this country who have far more but aren't as satisfied because they want even more. But I do struggle with our harvest readings each year. Our gospel reading this time tells us not to worry about food and clothes because God will provide for us. The problem is, there are so many people across the world who don't have enough food or clothes or access to clean water or medical care or education. I might not need to worry about my food or clothes, but they do. It's not fair. How is the gospel good news for them? Well, the thing is, God has provided the food, the clothes, and so much more. The problem is, because some of us have gone after more and more, the amazing abundance that God has provided isn't shared around fairly. We see it in countries like Malawi, where the impact of climate change means food is often scarce due to drought and famine. We see it in the lives of refugees who are forced to flee their homes to try to stay safe, but in doing so, have to leave with little or nothing other than what they're wearing. Many of those who have arrived in the UK from Afghanistan in the past month have come in clothing that really isn't suitable as we head into the British autumn and winter. They'll be worried about where their food will come from and where their clothes will come from. Food banks across the UK have experienced greater and greater demand over the past 18 months of the pandemic and are expecting it to get even worse when the universal credit top-up is withdrawn and fuel prices increase next month. There are people who need and should have more, and it's right that they try to get it. None of us would begrudge Oliver Twist asking for another bowl of gruel, would we? But those of us who have enough, or more than enough, are challenged by God not to keep going after that little bit extra. We're told to work for the kingdom of God, to work to make the world as God designed it to be, a righteous world, a just world, a world where all that God has provided is shared so that everyone has enough. Nobody goes without, so that nobody needs to worry where their food or their clothes or their water or anything else that they need will come from. So this harvest, let's give thanks to God, being truly grateful for all that we have. And let's do what we can to make sure that nobody goes without what they need, so that everyone can thank God for having enough. But let's not just do it this harvest. Let's do it throughout the year as well.